guest, because this next guest, you know him. He's come on the show a bunch of times. He is literally the pearl that I was granted by the guys over at NHL. I had no idea. I always talked to Pete Jensen, and he was like, hey, Troy Perlowitz is awesome. You should definitely have him come on. He's our researcher over at NHL.com. He is always helping those guys out, and he is helping me out like beyond, because I need help in the NHL, especially when it comes to props. So let's give it up for Troy Perlowitz. What's up?
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. I am so excited to get your takes on all the different props that we could see for tonight and throughout the series in the Stanley Cup Finals. I guess I'll start with, how surprised are you to see the Panthers being dogs?
A little, I guess. They're the closest thing to a dynasty that we have in the NHL right now. You've been to 3 straight cups. You won last year. You're the favorite. They don't have home ice, which is probably a big deal and why they're underdogs. But I think that speaks more to how good Edmonton is playing, especially coming into this final, that they deserve to be favorites more than Florida deserves to be an underdog.
Let's take a look at some of these props that you're looking at for tonight. So this is just for game 1, where tonight we do have Edmonton hosting Florida. The Oilers are minus 125, Panthers plus 104, total 6.5. First, you're looking at Brad Marchand to go over 0.5 point. Great value here at plus 110. Why?
Yeah, I hope people remember that Brad Marchand is a member of the Florida Panthers, an in-season trade, picked up at the deadline, and he's been a welcome addition to that roster. He's already played 20 career games in the Stanley Cup Final, which is incredible. That leads the Panthers. That's more than any Panther on their current roster. He's got 14 points in 17 games this postseason. 12 points in those 20 career Stanley Cup Final games. And he's playing on a line with Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell, which is that third line for Florida. And as Tom mentioned, I think they're going to probably end up missing that line in particular. They're probably going to missing McDavid and Draisaitl's line. So I really like their exposure. And that line in particular, they're outscoring opponents 10-2 at 5-on-5 during the playoffs. So they're really a juggernaut when it comes to the scoreboard. I really like Marchand's chances to get a point tonight.
It's great value. Plus 110. I love it. You've given us a lot of value on the board for this game, because you've got Evander Kane over 3.5 shots on goal. I mean, this is crazy. Plus 265. Damn. Why are you thinking this is like essentially an upset kind of pick?
So Evander Kane, I like him in particular, and I'm going to try to make this as simplistic as I can from a research standpoint. So Evander Kane is really, really good off the rush. What that means is that when a player skates into the offensive zone past the blue line, within 5 seconds, they're getting a shot on net. That would be off the rush. And Evander Kane is so good at that. He's one of the best Oilers ever, one of the best Oilers in that particular situation. I expect the Oilers are a much faster team. That's their advantage over the Panthers in this particular Stanley Cup Final. The Oilers, we have speed bursts at the NHL. We measure speed bursts at NHL Edge. Anything over 20 miles an hour is considered a speed burst. And Edmonton has over 100 more than Florida in the postseason. So they have a really big speed advantage. And what that means is that the Oilers tend to get more chances off the rush than all of their opponents do. And Evander Kane is big on that. He gets shots and he gets scoring chances and goals off the rush. So I really like his point as shots on goal prop in particular. He's playing with Leon Draisaitl on that second line, so he shouldn't see too much of Alexander Barkov, who's probably going to be playing a lot against McDavid's line. So I expect him to get even more chances off the rush tonight. And he's a player. Remember, Evander Kane, he only played 2 games in last year's Stanley Cup Final because he got injured. Then he missed the entire regular season and missed the first game of the postseason as well. So he's a highly motivated player. I expect he wants to shoot, and so I expect him to get over 3.5 tonight.
Wow. Okay. Well, you guys could get better value on that than almost anything in sports tonight, aside from maybe like a random home run prop. But I like the explanation of it, and you've sold me on a plus 265, which is like crazy. An anytime goal at plus 650. Also, Luostarinen, like, again, giving us so much value on the board tonight. Why should people be putting their money on a plus 650?
Well, I'm thinking that there's just so many. Florida's strength in this series is how deep they are, right? They come at you in droves. Their forecheck is great. I expect them to spend more time in the offensive zone than the Oilers do tonight. That's what Florida likes to do against their opponents. They're a big possession team, and they like to They like to get into the offensive zone and stay there. They like to retrieve pucks, skate around. So Luostarinen playing on that line with Marchand and Anton Lundell, I think those players are probably thought of more as for their offensive upside. But Luostarinen has been really good. He scored all 4 of his goals this postseason from that inner slot area. So I expect him to get, if the Panthers are going to score, and that might be hard to do tonight inside the Oilers building, it might be Luostarinen who does that for him.
Wow. I mean, again, a 6.5 total, it's pretty high compared to you. I mean, you're saying that it's going to be tough to score, yet we've got a 6.5 total. Why?
Yeah, I'll agree with Tom again. I expect there to be goals at the start of this series. Both teams are very good offensively. I think the Oilers generate more quality offense in terms of volume, but the Panthers, they have some stone cold killers on their team. They might not get a lot of volume of quantity of chances, but they convert on those and they turn them into goals. So Edmonton has been really good structurally on their defensive end. And then I don't expect them to stop that. I expect them to succeed there. But Florida, they convert. They're that team that they get into the red zone and then they score touchdowns. They don't settle for field goals, if you want to make a football analogy. So I really like Florida. Look, they might not generate a ton of scoring chances tonight, but I trust them to score goals when they do get those chances.
A block shots prop is not something that I'm totally familiar with. How do they, can you explain this to people who might not know hockey betting as well, how they book the block shots props?
So any attempt that is on net that they deem to be on net, any shot attempt that is deemed to be on net that is blocked by a defender is considered a block shot. I always think of block shots. It's funny because I don't think a lot of fans know this, but just from an analytical standpoint, in hockey, when you attempt a shot, there are 4 outcomes, right? We're all very familiar with a goal and a goalie save, right? Those are 2 outcomes we're all familiar with. But the other 2 outcomes are that the shot is blocked by a defender or the shot misses a net, right? Those are the 4 outcomes that you could do. And only about 5% of shot attempts are goals. So hockey's a very hard sport. It's a hard sport to play. It's a hard sport to gamble on. It's just a really hard sport. I like this block shot prop tonight in particular because, like I said, I expect Florida to spend a lot more time in the offensive zone than Edmonton tonight. And I expect them to want to shoot and test Stuart Skinner, who has been very good lately, but has shown signs of, not being very good like he was in the first 2 games of the postseason. So Mattias Ekholm is a huge X factor for me in this series, and I picked him. I really like any Oilers defenseman for a block shot prop tonight, but I picked Ekholm. I expect him to be a big X factor in this series. Remember, his first game of the postseason was that Game 5 clincher in the Western Conference Final against Dallas, and he played a little bit below than what he usually averages. I expect him to get, with the 5 days off of rest in between the Western Conference Final and the Stanley Cup Final, I expect him to be at full strength, play more minutes, and then probably block more shots than what the public is, or what sportsbook is expecting to block tonight.
Mark wants to know Perry first goal, and if not, then who else would you say?
I really like Corey Perry. Tom made a great point about Zach Hyman not being there. That's a huge deal for Edmonton. Zach Hyman's a big part of their offense. Zach Hyman is their net front presence on their power play. He's also fast. He plays a lot with McDavid. He played a lot on McDavid's wing. Corey Perry is a really good replacement. The only knock on Corey Perry is that he's 40 years old, and not a lot of people expect him to stay healthy. But he's here, and he's the most experienced Stanley Cup Final player in this series. I like that pick. That's a solid pick for a first goal scorer. He's got 7 goals in the postseason, and 6 of them have come from high danger areas. So like he's, that's exactly what we built him on. That's what he's doing. He's getting to the front of the net and he's scoring goals.
How would you tell people? I know people like these markets, first goal, first basket. How would you tell people to handicap the first goal?
It's a little random, right? But I would choose the team first. I think that's a big thing, is who do you expect to score first? Part of my calculus on a first goal scorer in game one in particular, you tend to go with the home team, right? Like the home team has their fans in the building.
I'd assume.
Yes, exactly. So Edmonton, it's the first time Canada, this whole entire country has hosted let's go back to Edmonton in particular. It's the first time they're hosting a game one in these playoffs. Remember, they started on the road in LA in the first round. In the second round against Vegas, they were on the road, and in the conference finals in Dallas, they were on the road as well. So this is the first time they're going to host a game one in the postseason. I like Edmonton's. I like anyone on Edmonton to score first. Canada hasn't really hosted a Stanley Cup final. I think it was Vancouver in 2011 was the last time that they hosted a game one. So I expect the building to just be jacked up, electric, anything you want to use.
I can't even imagine what it's going to be like out there in Canada for this. And let's take a look at the futures, because we were talking about the Conn Smythe for a bit, which we'll get to for some value. However, this is an interesting way to play Connor McDavid, who I know a lot of people probably have some action on Conn Smythe for him. To lead the series in shots on goal at plus 225, that's pretty nice for McDavid.
Yeah, so something about McDavid, he's shooting more, right? He's shooting more in the postseason than he was in the regular season. We expect Connor McDavid to find his points through playmaking, a lot of assists, but he's been shooting more. He's been shooting more from high danger areas. He's been shooting more from mid range, which is like the top of the circles area. He's been just shooting a lot more. So in terms of his shots on goal props, I really like this angle because you could get more value. There's probably not a lot of value on his points, probably not a lot of value on his goals, but for him to be a shots on goal producer, I expect that to happen in this series. Carter Verhaeghe is another one. For 3 goals in the series, he's Captain Clutch, right? He's got a great nickname in Swaggy. So I like his chances here in this series to score at least 3 goals. And then another one, you mentioned the Conn Smythe prop with McDavid. With Leon Draisaitl, I think he's being a little mispriced here for his odds, which is why I like him and I have him here. Leon Draisaitl is a big series away from winning the Conn Smythe. I agree with Tom. 99% of the time, McDavid's going to win the Conn Smythe if the Oilers win the Stanley Cup. But I do see a scenario if Draisaitl has a huge series and McDavid is a little neutralized, that he could jump in there and possibly win the award. Remember this on Draisaitl. He was held without a goal for the entire Stanley Cup final last year. So he's a motivated player to get back and do some big-time production in this series.
I like that. Someone with a little chip on their shoulder, no pun intended, on winning a potential chip. Speaking of winning the chip, who's winning this series?
I like Tom's angle on 6 or 7 games because these teams are very evenly matched, and we got a legendary series last year. I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be a long series this year. I had Edmonton at the start of the playoffs. I'm going to stick with them. I think they had all the traits of a Stanley Cup contender. They play really good defense. They could score at will whenever you want. And when you lose a Stanley Cup final and you drain it all out and you end up with nothing at the end of last season, I don't know what more can motivate you to get back there, and which they have, and to finally win this time. I like the Oilers, and I'll take them in 7 because I like the series. I would love to, as an NHL employee, I would love the series to go 7 games. And
it's crazy right now that I'm seeing the total games is 5.5 on FanDuel, but juiced to the over at minus 210. Like, let's move this baby up.
Yeah, right.
Do you think even if it went over 6, like if it went to 6.5, you'd say like this ends in 7?
Correct. Yeah, that's the way to do it. I mean, the Oilers, But both teams, Florida was pushed to 7 games by Toronto, but the Oilers, they're 12-2 in their last 14 games. They haven't had long series. I think it's a test, right? Both teams want it. There's great storylines on both sides. The Oilers going for their first cup since 1990, and Florida trying to repeat in 2 of their 3 appearances. It's really great storylines, and I'm just looking forward for it to start in a couple hours.
Mark has another question. He said there's a prop on FanDuel for McDavid to beat Gretzky's Stanley Cup final points with 14. Do you like that? It's plus 550.
Sure. I mean,
you can be honest. You could tell him no.
No, I think he's in for a huge series. How big? 14 points is a lot, right? And you're also banking on the series going long, if that's the case, right? I like the series going 7 games. I like McDavid to get.
I mean, it's high totals at 6.5 so far.
Sure, yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right? McDavid is averaging close to 2 points per game in his career against Florida, combined in the postseason and the regular season. So it's obviously an opponent he likes. He's okay playing in that building. I like that. I like that bet just because I don't see a scenario where McDavid is quiet in this series. I just think it's set up for him. He's healthy. He's playing at the top of his game. I think he's in for a huge series.
So anyone who watches this show knows that I have this segment where I talk about the most bet on props of the day. That segment is called Propaganda. So you're going to play along with me for the NHL Propaganda. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here it is, Propaganda. It's my favorite stinger. Okay. Wait, hold on. I did this wrong. I got too excited. Propaganda for the NHL. So these are the most bet on props right now in the NHL for game 1. Connor McDavid to score an anytime goal. Connor McDavid to score the first goal. Leon Draisaitl to score a goal. No goal in the first 10 minutes. Sam Bennett under a half a point. So when it's the most bet on props, I always talk about fading the public. This is obviously where the public's betting. Which of these props would you tell people to fade or not bet?
I'd go McDavid. I'd fade no goal in the first 10 minutes. And I'll tell you why. I do expect I agree with Tom again, and I'm sorry if I said this, but I expect there to be high number of goals in the early portions of this series and then kind of dry out as the series goes on. I just have a feeling someone's going to score in the first 10 minutes of the game. I mean, we saw Florida do that in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final against Carolina, and Florida's been a road juggernaut, right? They've also won 5 straight games on the road in the postseason, and they've outscored teams by 22 goals in that span, which is crazy. And Edmonton, in their own right, is a very good home team, right? They've won 6 of 7 at home in the postseason, and they're outscoring opponents by 16 goals. So both teams like to jump on their opponent early. So I would fade no goal in the first 10 minutes because I think there is going to be one.
I love it. See, there's always a reason to fade the public. Very rarely does the public go 5-0. In fact, more commonly, the public goes 0-5. And it's happened before where I have gone through propaganda and I'm like, L. So it's a lot of fun to be able to fade them.
Yeah, the public is not very smart sometimes.
No. And what I've heard from a lot of these odds makers is that these like influencers will give out these bets and the public will just follow this TikTok person that's probably 21 years old and just started gambling, be like, oh, he's great at gambling. He says that he's up 58 units. Like, dude, you're 21.
That's why people should tune into this show.
Exactly, because we've got a pro like Troy Perlowitz, who's over at NHL.com. And I know that you have what show are you on the show, or do you just do research for Pete's show?
I just do research for Pete's show now, but there are talks. Sources close to me tell me that there might be a change coming up next year. We shall see.
That's why we love having you on, because anything I could do to help, you are so freaking awesome, and you give us so much information on the NHL that I think the viewers really, really like it. Like here, Easy Money, Prop Queen, thank you for helping me win money. Like, this is what the point is bringing on smart people like Troy to come and talk to you guys. And he said, this show has helped me win a lot of money. Troy is good at that. So catch him over at NHL.com and here all the time because I am definitely bringing you back on for more Stanley Cup Finals.
I love the opportunity. I'm here for you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks, Troy.